is actually done by the teachers in Blessed Sacrament and all of our Catholic schools who are with them all day long. When I sub or cover recess duty, by the end of it, I'm like, I'm ready to go to my office. So it's the Catholic school teachers who are the bread and butter of the work that we're doing. So I moved to Charleston. This is my 4th year of Blessed Sacrament. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, but I most recently lived out in Breezy Point and the Rockaways. So to know New York City, next to the Louisiana Purchase, it was the next best great land deal that somebody negotiated a section of Queens, and it is a private gated beach community where people don't wear shoes, don't lock their bicycle, they only lock their beer cooler. It is something that feels, like a throwback in time. So when folks say, oh, you came from New York City, I feel like, no, I came from a barrier island. No, I didn't come from that New York City. So we started coming down to Charleston about 15 years ago and fell in love, and it was a matter of not if we would move here, but when we would move here. My husband retired from the New York Fire Department. He was also a police officer, and he couldn't get out quick enough. It sounds like after his time was done, or his felt like a life sentence at the end. We have 2 boys. I have a junior at Bishop England, and we just dropped our older son, Michael, off at University of South Carolina a few weeks ago, so that was a new experience, a whole next level of empathy for all the parents going through dropping children off. My whole career has been in education. I started off by working in the independent school world, more of the Porter Gouds and that private, non-religious sect, which was the kind of school I went to. I went to a school called Poly Prep. So Poly Prep, if you know anything about Brooklyn, is that right when you come over the Verrazano, you see a big white tower, and right adjacent to Poly Prep is Fort Hamilton Army Base. Across the street from my high school is Dyker Beach Course, which I think, for a golf enthusiast, is the most highly played public golf course in the country, and it is rumored that Tiger Woods played there when his father was stationed at Fort Hamilton. So it was a great place to grow up. It still has great Italian food. If you're ever passing through and need some recommendations in Brooklyn, happy to give those to you. I very much believe in mission-driven education, and as the years went on in the type of school system I was raised, I started to become disheartened. There is a difference between trying to fulfill the mission of a private school and serving God. And there's a lot to be negotiated and thought about when making leadership decisions in a school, that you kind of say like, hey, does this align with our mission? It kind of does. I mean, it could work for this purpose, and we could explain it that way. And it's different when you're in a Catholic school and it's really clear what we're called to do and what we need to do and what our kids deserve from us. And as the world has gotten a little crazier and crazier and crazier, I had a family come from the independent sector to Blessed Sacrament whose words were, it's time to straighten out the moral compass in my family. So it's an interesting shift that we are growing at Blessed Sacrament. We continue to have lots of families from our parish who believe in Catholic education. It was always their plan to attend a Catholic school. We have families that have grown disheartened with the public sector and some of the things that they just don't want their kids to be exposed to. And we're now seeing some families from the independent school market as well. So it's an interesting time for our school. And then those other northerners who moved down, and I keep saying, I'm not that COVID New Yorker who came down just because. It was a 15-year love affair, so hopefully I don't feel that new. When I arrived at Blessed Sacrament, Father AJ said, I just need you to take care of the ladies in the building. Was kind of his, right? Like, take care of the ladies in the building. That would be the staff. We now have 3 men on staff, including Mr. Mario, our facilities manager. So we have a 5th grade male teacher, and we now have a junior high male teacher, and they are a wonderful, wonderful addition to our community. So we're not just the ladies in the building. And Father is super supportive and super excited and has never been so involved in the school, because it went from just conversations about what do our teachers need, how's the school doing, where's enrollment, are our finances in order? And, my first couple meetings with Tony over there, I was a little nervous. And it has now become an exciting time for a whole new vision for Blessed Sacrament. With the help of LS3P, we are making headway with plans to announce a $12 million capital campaign to coincide with Catholic Schools Week in February. BRAC, the Diocesan Building Review Architecture Committee, has approved our beautiful conceptual designs. So we're putting all of that material together. I found, it was shared with me only a week ago, the 1999 capital campaign for a Parish Life Center, which I heard nothing about for the 2 years we've been talking about this project. So it was kind of exciting to see, and interesting that so much of the master campus plan from 1995 is very much what we're hoping to still accomplish. So in the early meetings, when folks have said, ma'am, we've been talking about this for as long as I can remember, there's physical documented corroboration that this is something the parish has long needed. It is not just an initiative for the school, though our kids certainly need an indoor space for athletics and the performing arts, and it's the first time, because our enrollment has grown, that we have 2 PE classes going on at the same time, and that's what the schedule calls for, and we don't have, if it's raining, 2 places, bless you, 2 places for those classes to take place. But Blessed Sacrament is a vibrant parish with so much going on, and our original Church of Parish Hall is the only space for community groups to meet. So it's a race to sign out the parish hall between the Knights of Columbus and the Hispanic community and the music ministry and the school, which means just because of that limitation of space and a place to get together, our ministries collectively can't realize their fullest potential to do all that they could do if they have the right space. So it's a exciting time. We had our 75th anniversary last year. It was the first downtown Hibernian gala, and was it a great party? Absolutely. But I was touched by seeing the long-standing families and the pride and excitement they had to be part of something so big. So we talk about in our school that little people can do big things. In fact, last year we had a K-5 student whose concept was chosen from the whole school for the James Island Christmas card. But our little school can do big things if everybody comes together and supports it. And this is not just our little school, but our parish, which is not so little. If you're there on a Sunday looking for a parking spot, you know that Blessed Sacrament is a growing, thriving parish. So I'm super grateful to be a part of it. I've had the pleasure and benefit of being in different schools so that I can really appreciate where I am and the talent and quality of the staff. While I would agree that teachers collectively don't get paid enough, it is the first year that we were able to bring all of our staff up to 80% of the public sector, which was a push from the bishop for all schools to do. Some schools can do it. Some schools, given enrollment and where they are, may not be able to do it. But to support and invest in our teachers and attract and retain great teachers, they do deserve fair pay. And that difference of 20%, I would say our faculty are okay with, because they too see it as a calling. I hope that it's a great working environment, that they feel supported, they get to really teach, they get to speak about God. There's occasionally a little discipline here and there, but on the whole, it's a great group of kids. It's usually recess, basketball, boys, right? But it is, we know all about that. So I'm so excited to be in Charleston and to be at Blessed Sacrament. I'm looking forward to what the next 6 months, year, 2 years holds. I guess that's it. but I'm happy to answer any questions about our school. And yes, sir.
What is your enrollment now?
So it is $350. So when we put together our journal, I didn't inherit any archives or database. Those are things that we put together, and it's been a great learning experience to put that together. There was a time when there were 1,000 students at Blessed Sacrament,
Yes.
but that's when we thought it was appropriate to put 45 to 50 kids in a classroom that we now cap at 20. So we have 2 sections per grade level through the 6th grade. So when we graduate the current 7th and 8th grade, we'll have another little enrollment jump. So I think we're gonna cap out somewhere between 380 and 400. And that would be 2 classes between 15 and 20 on every grade level. 3 years ago, we were at 246. So even with adding 1 section, you would think like 15 more a year, 15 more a year, but we're outpacing that, adding a section.
Now, were you mentioning that there was a funding drive that is for a new school building?
Parish Life Center.
Parish Life
Parish Life.
Where you gonna put it?
So we took the needed space, right? So all the Catholic schools felt the pain of not having St. Joseph's available for our basketball league. And you know, all of our schools appreciate that we've always had this great basketball tradition. So we really, we had to have a regulation court in the mix of that Parish Life Center. So we looked around our property to see all the different options of where it could potentially go. So it would just about join, there would be a space from the side of the church. It would be right between the church and the parish hall. The parish hall would be the outside facade, the windows, part of the interior will remain the same, keeping that history of our first church. The impetus for this conversation also started when we were in the parish hall, hearing the HVAC, watching the leak and saying, should we invest $1 million in a building that doesn't meet the need of any ministry? Or should we be thinking about expansion? So the parish hall section of the Parish Life Center would still be able to accommodate a meeting space of 75 to 100 people. There would be a lobby. It would join to a gymnasium that could also fit 450 people at a seated dinner. There would be a new industrial kitchen that would be placed so it could serve both concessions to the gym or if there's food in the Parish Life Center. The back of the Parish Life Center would become 2 stories. On the 2nd floor would be the new church offices. That would include a conference room. So you would come from St. Teresa, there'll be a parking lot designated for the church offices, and there'd be a back entrance to the Parish Life Center to bring you to the 2nd floor. So that people doing church business don't have to come through the gym and the lobby and the up and the down, so they would have reserved parking by our Adoration Chapel. So you could have a game, a theatrical performance, something, nights here, finance council upstairs, so you have more options of multiple ministries meeting simultaneously.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump your question, was that it? I didn't mean to jump your
that's
question.
good.
That was it?
Yeah, no, thanks.
Oh,
So you mentioned you have a male teacher.
2.
Two male teachers. All right, excellent. So, from my experience, just through the eyes of my son and his peers and all that stuff, particularly in elementary school, male teachers are like rock stars. How do you recruit more? How does Catholic education or education generally recruit more teachers? And what do you see the important value of having a male teacher beyond just my observation of my son and his peers? How do you attribute that?
So statistically, most male teachers in Catholic education will be on the high school level. But and it seems that even we had probably 4 or 5 other male applicants for the same spot, and they all are history guys. 100% of them were like, well, I could probably do this, but social studies is what I'm really into. So I don't know what that's just an interesting, to note. So Stu came to us from New Jersey. He had a science background, and he was a catechesis instructor and just felt he had a calling to Catholic education and moved. He taught for 12 years in a Catholic school in New Jersey. So when he came down, he really found us on the diocesan website. We advertised. Mike Sporich was working at his Catholic high school in Ohio and wanted to come to Charleston and was looking at openings, and his certification was in 7th through 12th grade, so it translated to. I'm going to tell you, you definitely have to be competitive in terms of salary and benefits. I'm going to put that out there for sure. For Mike, the opportunity to run an after-school program and get involved in athletics was a draw for him. When we go out to recruit, we don't recruit based on gender, race, or anything else. So all of our recruitment is out there for all. So I feel lucky, and I think God is good and brought them to us rather than it was me going out and finding them. But it is just, it is a great energy. It's a different perspective. All diversity is good. There's always going to be, opportunities for to be able to see a child through different lenses and different experiences is always going to make us a better community.
But doesn't it, aren't the conditions in the culture generally, that much more difficult for boys kind of growing up, young men? Is that something that has to be consciously looked at by the broader community?
I would agree with you. In fact, there's a book called, it's either The Problem with Boys or The Trouble with Boys, and there was a woman on the board when I worked at Poly, so I went back to my high school to work there, who was a news, anchor or something, and she wrote this book. So I didn't have the same perspective as I have now as the mother of 2 boys when I read it, but I thought, I should probably read her book. And the punchline in the book was, there's not trouble with boys, there's troubles with the way our schools are geared towards girls, was my takeaway from reading the book. So I think about it a lot, and I think the statistic, though it feels like it should be higher, is 85% of elementary school teachers are women, the highest percentage being white women, right? And when they set up their classrooms, they are often girly, right? They appeal to things they like. When they're thinking about their favorite literature, they think about what they liked. So I think there is that unintentional bias in certain things that goes on. So really stepping back, and this, I was sharing with some that we were here for training. There's a new evaluative tool called the Danielson platform to do our teacher evaluations, but there's 5 domains. So officially there's 4, and the diocese has developed a Catholic identity domain, which isn't part of Danielson, but will be part of our platform. But it really looks at everything from the level of student engagement and student experience. So I think it's going to be a great opportunity to have conversations with teachers, and also it's very, it's based on objective measurables and data. So it's not like, in your class I feel like you favor the girls. It will be, in your class I noticed that out of 11 times you called on students, 9 of them were female. So it's giving the teacher the objective data to respond to help them grow, become a better teacher, right? So, sometimes as a principal you go into classrooms and you feel like teachers are like, oh, what is she gonna get me? Like, where am I gonna mess up? And she's gonna catch me doing something wrong. And that's not what it's about. I mean, if any teacher I offer a contract to, I believe in them. I think they're great. I think they have something awesome to offer. It doesn't mean we don't all have room for growth. And this is, I think, a more meaningful way to help folks grow. There is also something to be said that, some of our boys are the ones who maybe have a little bit more ants in their pants than other kids. And I think, something I really talk to the teachers about all the time, they say like, Mrs. King, so-and-so is, flipping his water bottle in the lunchroom, or, doing whatever. And it's like, okay, well, did you talk to them about it? Did you ask them why? Or what happened before before you saw the thing that you witnessed? Did he ask that question? Because most of the time they're like, so-and-so, yelled and called him stupid. And I'm like, well, did you ask him? Oh, well, he told him he was ugly. Like there was something that happened before. So it's easy for me to say and have the patience when kids come to me and to say like, okay, let's talk about this. Like what? And I get from a teacher, it's like, I'm running here and I have a prep and you're in the hallway and why are you on the floor? So it's being able to take that time. But one of, the Catholic teachings, we talk about human dignity. So I speak to the teachers about that a lot. When there's a Catholic kind of tradition of like clip downs and, does that feel like public shaming? Are there other more humane ways to address behavior? So there are ways. I think we have an excellent staff, and being in a school is just 350 potential little fires, that you're watching all day long. Right? So, our teachers need support. They need breaks. They need opportunities to collaborate. They need opportunities in a place to, in a constructive way, complain. So it's not an easy job. But I may have earned myself, or there may be a time when they talk about, remember that principal, Mrs. King? She was crazy about getting rid of the flooding, she was crazy about safety, and she was a little soft on the boys. That might be a thing.
So another question here, forgive me if I don't want to jump in anybody else, but so there is a dynamic in which parents look at Catholic education as kind of a midway point to kind of high-end private education and public education. And they look at the quality of Catholic education and they're drawn to that. And then there is a divergence of values for those parents. I've seen this, Catholic high school, where there are secular values that kind of creep into the school. It may not be the same in an elementary school, but they kind of creep into a school, and then you have this struggle with tuition-paying parents versus the values of the Catholic Church and Catholic education. Have you encountered that, and how do you resolve that?
So I probably authentically had that experience in New York, where it was, Horace Mann or Fieldston or Trinity in Manhattan, $65,000 in New York City, and public and Catholic schools, high school, maybe 20 in New York. And we had Muslim students and Jewish students, and it was not for the religion. It was for safety, it was for quality of teaching. I do the statistics and data all the time on our school. In fact, Father Frimmel, if you know Father Frimmel, was visiting and we were talking about it. He said, wow, when I used to be the assistant pastor, the school was, or he was some sort of trained. I don't think he was formally an assistant pastor. But it was 20% parishioner and 80% non-parishioner. We are at over 70% parishioner now. And I would say of the non-parishioner, probably another 10-15% are Catholic, but don't attend Blessed Sacrament. And the rest, we have some Protestant friends, and we have some Catholics who have not gotten themselves to Mass to put in that envelope, so they're not in the statistic of being a parishioner. It feels so driven by our family's faith. And I think it is the reason it's such an incredible space. So it's, you have a commonality. We can all be different in our families, but we have the most important thing in common, is that choice to put God first. So I'm not experiencing that. And I don't like bullies, so when parents come in and want to say crazy things, I politely say, you're welcome to do that, but no, so.
Very good.
I was curious how you're handling all this gender craze stuff, especially with the kids being so little. Like, do you
student who I wouldn't say was a question of gender, but sexuality. And it didn't impact this, she didn't bring it into the school, but I reached out to the former superintendent. I was like, hey, I'm just troubleshooting here. You know, how, there's great writings, there's the theology of the body and all God's children, and there's great material out there. I don't get the sense that the church is going to change or allow there to be entertaining of things other than what it is. Now, I had, one child who I also called the superintendent who didn't understand why he wasn't invited to all of the girls' birthday. Like, all the girls were invited, but how come I'm not? And I was like, well, and we kind of worked with his parents, and things have kind of settled down, and sometimes when kids are little, they just go through phases and stages, but I heard in the Diocese of Miami, they're doing more work around preparing for what if these conversations are in schools. I'm gonna do whatever the diocese gives us and tells us to do, but it hasn't impacted our space right now. In fact, the new superintendent, Colleen Donahue, just joined us from Boston. She is here to focus on Catholic identity. The assistant superintendent is still doing the teacher training, the teacher certification. She is here for Catholic identity. And she actually, for Danielson, when they came in, her talk was about the dangers of the secular world in our schools and like the vigilance, like even moving now and talking about professional development. They want any speaker we bring in for PD to be vetted through human resources to make sure that they align with Catholic values outside, like if you bring somebody in on differentiated teaching or, using math centers, that they still want to vet all of it to make sure that there's nothing coming into our training that's not aligned with our beliefs.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so at Blessed Sacrament, how are you guys handling children that may be a little behind the curve, need a little more help? My son was in another Catholic elementary in the area. We had to move him into public education because he just didn't have the resources at that school to help bring him up to grade level.
Yeah.
Do you guys have plans for students that are kind of behind the eight ball there?
We do, and it's always going to depend on the scope of the need. So I think we can do a really good job within a certain range. If you have a child who's severely dyslexic and they need Orton Gillingham instruction all day long, then a school that could give it to you twice a week for 20 minutes, you probably don't want your child. I think it would be great. St. John's does a great job with students with all different learning needs. But we have, especially the students who join us when they're 3 and 4, if you come to us, we're gonna do our best to have you graduate. So we do have an academic interventionist. We've actually grown our learning support so that Erin Bellender oversees reading all the paperwork, coming up with a support plan. I'm actually doing another master's program at the Citadel and in literacy, and it was, God is good. It was like the exact course I needed at the moment showed up on supporting students with learning disabilities, and they talk about the least restrictive environment, and really, I think the statistic was like 85% of most kids can be successful in a general education setting. Like, you don't want them pulled out. You want to train your teachers on how to apply the accommodations they're entitled to and the supports that they need. So we're flipping our program to say, don't just say like, oh, they have something, they get to, go to the learning specialist, but we're doubling down on more support for teachers to keep them in the room, and it's so nuanced for each child that you can't just say like, hey, here are like 75 things you could potentially do. What they need is someone to come in and say, this child learns this way, this is their accommodation, this is what it's looked like, do you want me to be in the classroom and model for you with them? So we're bringing more staff in. So we have 2 folks who do small group work and are available for extended time. We brought in a 3rd person to help, who's also now We gave all of our first graders the DIBELS evaluation, which is an early screening for dyslexia, but it's also gives you another touch point on where they are with their reading, because there's a natural funnel from K3 through second grade. Like, it's developmentally appropriate to be like this wide and when you're 3, and then when you're 4, and then when you're 5. Our goal is by the end of second grade, everyone's kind of on the same page. When you think about it, if I have a August 1st birthday or an August 2nd birthday, and one parent decided to hold back and one sent them, and you're 3, somebody's been on the planet a whole lot longer, right? Like, there's gonna be in those little ages. So one of the nice things about a small school is we don't have to be all on the same page when we're little, or in ever, but like, we have to be moving forward. We need to know what your potential is, and we need to make sure you're gonna get to where you need to go. And it doesn't have to be the same for everyone.
And you had talked about the pay gap of 20%. Even with the pay gap, is everyone at Blessed Sacrament, all the teachers there, still accredited in the way they need to be accredited?
Yes.
I found that in other places they may not be.
Yes, sir. The only, I had, a music teacher who's widely known in Charleston, an amazing liturgical choir director. She doesn't need to be certified,
No.
you know.
Okay.
So, but for a classroom
Sure.
academic teacher, absolutely.
We have time for one more question. Greg, did you?
I was curious about, do you have an economics program in the junior high segment, and if there's instruction on teaching kids when they're young, starting to teach them how to manage money and about economics and budgeting and things of that nature?
There's not, but I think it would be great if you are interested in volunteering. I knew that was coming.
Well, I might be able to talk, we're talking about 80% now.
Yeah. No, I think it would be great. No, it's not currently part of our program.
Yes. Well, Tony.
One more question. Do you have a way of measuring your students' performance against other schools' performance, particularly being interested in how you stack up against Portugal, Charleston Day, Mason Prep, test scores, or?
So the Catholic and public sectors use MAP testing. So we do every spring create a report that shows our school's performance, 3 colors, like our school performance, public school, and Catholic school norms. So how are we performing compared to the public sector, and how are we performing within the Catholic school market? The independent schools typically use the Educational Records Bureau, the ERBs. So it's a different platform that we don't have the same access to. But I am sure, dollar for dollar, we're doing a better job in Catholic schools.
Thank you so much.